How's it going, guys? Before we even get into this video, I just want to say that I am a huge Seven Deadly Sins fan. Genuinely, I watched the anime, I followed the manga, I have actual opinions about the power scaling debates in this fandom. Meliodas versus Escanor is a conversation that I would gladly have with you for hours and hours. So when Marvel announced that they were building a full open RPG instead of Brittania, I didn't just see this as a gaming announcement, I felt it. This is one of those rare moments where a franchise you actually love gets the big budget treatment it deserves, and the hype I had for this game was real. And that cuts both ways, you know, because when you're a genuine fan of something like this, the stakes are higher. It's not just, will this be a good game? Maybe. It's, did they do justice to something I really care about? Badly made anime games hit differently when you love the source material. You feel every corner that got cut, every lazy character moment, every flashy trailer that oversold what the actual product delivered. So going into Seven Deadly Sins Origin, I wanted this to be good, but I needed to be honest about everything that it actually is. And here's where I land after spending real time with it. This game surprised me in a way that I had high expectations and it still found ways to exceed them. That doesn't mean that it was flawless by any means, and we're going to talk about those problems too, but as a fan of this franchise, there's a lot worth getting excited about. So today we're going deep: the world, the story, the combat, what works, what doesn't, and ultimately, is this worth your time? So let's get into it. Let me give you the basic rundown for anyone who isn't already deep in the Seven Deadly Sin fandom. The manga and the anime this game is based on sold over 55 million copies worldwide. It has a massive following, but Origin isn't retelling that story. This is its own original narrative set in the same world, Brittania, following a character named Tristan. If that name rings a bell, it's because Tristan is the son of Meliodas and Elizabeth, the two of the biggest characters from the original series. So you're not just some random new protagonist dropped into a familiar setting. There's actual connective tissue here. Tristan travels alongside a companion named Theora, and together they stumble across a mysterious object called the Book of Stars that kicks off the whole conflict. Creatures that should be extinct are suddenly back, a dark corruption is spreading across Brittania, long dead heroes are showing up, both from the original Seven Deadlies, and there's a scholar named Clotho who always knows exactly where Tristan and Theora are going to be before they even get there. What I appreciate about the story that it doesn't feel like an obligation. It doesn't feel like the developers built the gameplay systems first and then wrote a plot just to justify the open world. There's a clear sense of what they actually care about from the narrative, and the presentation backs that up. The writing has personality, the characters feel like they belong in this world, and for a free-to-play game, the level of investment in the storytelling is something that you shouldn't take for granted, because most games in this space don't even bother to try. With that being said, the story pacing does stumble in places. Certain sections feel like they're moving a little too fast, like they're trying to get you to the next gameplay hook before the emotional beats of the current scene are fully landed. It doesn't ruin anything, but it's just noticeable, especially if you're someone who generally invests in these narratives. My hope is that for future games, they develop a little bit more and support post-launch, and the storytelling gets more room to breathe. The foundation is solid enough that it deserves that. Now let's talk about the world itself, because this is one of the things that generally caught me off guard. Brittania in this game is about 30 square kilometers of open world to explore, and before your eyes glaze over at that number, let me put that in context. This map has real variety to it. You're not just running through the same reskin biome over and over again. Big luscious forests, desert expansions, fairy realms that look like they belong in a dream, tropical coastlines, medieval towns, and there are dense woodlands that completely differ from atmosphere from everything around them. The environments feel distinct and intentional, not just visual different just for the sake of it. The world was clearly built for Unreal Engine, and it shows it in the best possible way. The lighting, the environmental detail, the draw distance, it all comes together in a way that makes Brittania feel like a real place worth spending time in. There are specific areas, for example, I'll just say the Fairy King's Forest, where you stop moving just to take it all in for a second. The game is absolutely stunning. The exploration isn't just walking from point A to point B. There's fishing, cooking, crafting, alchemy, miming, and gathering all woven into the loop. You can climb on surfaces if you got the stamina for it, glide down the heights, and eventually you unlock a way to ride around the world on Hawk. And yes, Hawk, the beloved character that we all know from the anime, which is exactly as fun as it sounds. Fast travel exists enough through the special stones scattered around the map, but you have to find them first. That's a design choice that I actually respect because it gives you a reason to explore rather than just teleporting everywhere from the jump. The main city, Leonis, functions as a social hub. You can see other players there, interact with NPCs, grab gear from shops, customize your characters with cosmetics. It has an MMO feel in the best sense. It's a place that feels alive because real people are in it. That being said, the social layer only really applies to Leonis. The rest of the open world doesn't have that same energy, which is a trade-off worth knowing about before going in. One thing that really does hold the world back slightly is that some of the areas feel a little bit thin. Not bad, but not fully realized either. Certain zones don't have enough interesting things happening in them, and fast travel points are unevenly distributed in ways that really make some of the areas feel more like padding rather than actual exploration. These are flexible things and they're a solid foundation here, but it's worth mentioning that the world isn't perfect wall to wall. Alright, let's get into the combat because this is where Origin really makes his case.
Don't fuck with me! I have the power of God and anime on my side!
The system at its core of this game is a tag-based action and combat setup. You build a team of 4 heroes and swap between them in real time during fights. That alone isn't groundbreaking, we've seen that in other games, but the way Origins layers its mechanics on top of the base is where things really get genuinely interesting. Here's how it works. As you attack, you use skills, you build up what the game calls tag points, and when you stack enough of those up, switching to another hero triggers a tag skill, a powerful entry attack that deals serious damage and simultaneously fills your ultimate gauge. You can still swap heroes without full tag points, but you won't get that bonus hit. The key thing to understand is that the hero's rotation loop is the biggest damage multiplier in the game. It's dramatically less effective. Rotating your roster correctly is the difference between a clean flight or getting slaughtered. On top of that, each hero can equip up to 3 different weapon types. You can swap between them mid-combat at any time. This isn't just a stat check. Every weapon completely changes your hero's skill set, their element, and their ultimate move. So a character like Meliodas, for example, plays entirely different depending on whether you have him running a longsword versus an axe versus a dual sword. Longswords are about buffering his attack for burst windows. Axes lean focused single target damage. Dual swords miss damage with surprising levels of healing unity. There's 3 completely different identities for one character, and that kind of depth exists across the whole roster. And importantly, this is a system that rewards learning. Your first few hours might feel a little bit flat, especially if you're mashing through early content before you have a full team assembled. But as you unlock new weapon masteries, add more heroes to your roster, and start to understand how the mechanics connect, there's a general depth here that keeps revealing itself. That kind of growth curve is exactly what you want from a game like this. The dodge system has improved significantly from the earlier build feedback. Dodges now properly avoid hits with clearer visual feedback, which sounds like a small thing but adds a huge difference and how the moment-to-moment flow feels. Jump canceling was also added to the game. You can cancel your attack animations by jumping, which dramatically improves how responsive everything feels, adds a layer of skill impression to the combat encounters. These weren't always part of the game, and the fact that developers listened to the feedback and added them to the game are genuinely encouraging. Speaking of developers, let's talk about something that matters a lot to me personally when I'm deciding whether to invest my time in a live service game. Does the team actually listen? Netmarble ran a closed beta test for this game in late 2025, and the feedback from that beta was substantial. Controls felt like they had too much inertia, the dodge system felt unreliable, certain open world zones felt empty, the UI was overly complicated and would interrupt gameplay at worst moments. Now here's what matters. Netmarble actually delayed the game from its original January release specifically to address the feedback. They added jump canceling, they fixed the dodge system, they improved the adventure guidance and the fast travel across the open world. They standardized key mapping and streamlined the UI so it doesn't hijack your experience. They added critical hit zones on bosses, which rewards skill and precise targeting rather than just having bigger numbers. They improved the visibility of combined attacks so you can see which hero pairings unlock full power combo finishers. That's not just a minor patch, that's structure, and the fact that they pushed back the launch window to do the right thing rather than just ship a broken product and patching it up after the fact in 2026, that decision deserves an acknowledgement, and it's not common for developers. Now let me be real with you, some things that gave me some issues. The gacha mechanics are here with this game and they're real. Origins is free to play, which means it has a pool system for acquiring heroes. During the beta, the game was generous with its currency in a way that made it hard to evaluate what the actual long-term economy looks like. That kind of thing most likely is now tightened up during the full release. Whether Netmarble keeps the game feeling accessible over time or slowly shifts it towards a model where making meaningful progress without spending money becomes an actual grind is the big unknown. Netmarble has a history here that I can't pretend doesn't exist. They shipped games before that started off well and then got increasingly aggressive with the modernization as time went on. Origins could be completely different, but there are signs that they've put more care into this one rather than the previous titles. But I'm not in the business of telling you things are fine when there's legitimate reasons to watch out for. Keep an eye on the economy, pay attention to how the resource rates feel in the first few weeks of the live game, not just during the launch week when drops are usually inflated. On the progression side, Mastery XP requirements felt disproportionately high. On the progression side, Mastery XP felt really high compared to how quickly the game gives you ways to earn it. Certain material drops were always on the low side, especially for materials tied to character mastery. And realistically, those rates in the live game tend to be on the tighter side rather than the beta environment. If that doesn't get addressed, it could make a meaningful character progression feel more like a wall rather than a journey. The PC requirements are worth noting too. You're looking at a 16 gig of RAM as the minimum, with the 32 gig recommended. If your machine is a few years old and hasn't been upgraded recently, run those specs before you commit because of this demanding game on the hardware side. And the climbing system is a little janky in ways that occasionally pull you out of the experience. If you're trying to get onto a roof or scale a wall and there's something slightly above you blocking the geometry, your character just refuses to cooperate. Swimming speed is also slower than it needs to be for how much water exists in the world. There are small things, but they can chip away at the sense of flow that the rest of the game worked hard to create. So let's talk about who this game is for. If you're a fan of Seven Deadly Sins franchise, the manga, the anime, the characters, this is a no-brainer download. You're getting a new story in the world that you really care about, with the cast that includes familiar faces along the new one, and a level of visual identity that does the source material justice. For fans of the series, Origin is probably going to feel like exactly what you've been waiting for. If you're someone who enjoys action RPGs with real combat depth, but you've never touched Seven Deadly Sins before, this is still worth your time. You don't need to know the lore to appreciate the combat system, and the story is structured with a new narrative with enough context built in that you won't feel lost. The world is generally beautiful and there's a lot of context at launch to sink into. If you're cautious about gacha games especially, I hear you, trust me, and I think the caution is reasonable. The core game is strong enough that it would be worth playing even if it charged a flat rate entry price. Whether the free-to-play model stays fair is something we'll know more about in the months after the launch. Going into it with eyes open and not treating it as a game that you need to spend money on is a defensible approach. If you're someone who wants a tight linear action game with no live service components at all, this one probably isn't for you. The open world structure, the gacha layer, the daily content loop, there are fundamentals to what the game really is. Here's where I stand. Seven Deadly Sins Origin is one of the more ambitious anime RPGs to come out in recent memory, and that earns that description. The combat system is the centerpiece, and it generally delivers the potential once you invest enough time to understand it. The open world is visually stunning and large enough to feel like a real place rather than backdrop. The storytelling has craft and personality behind it, and the developmental team demonstrated through actual action and not just PR statements. That takes a player feedback. The gacha mechanic is a question mark that hangs over us all, and it's not something that I can hand wave away. Netmarble track record is what it is, and Origin could be different from their other games, and there's reason to believe it might be, but it's a live service title, and those games are always long-term bet. But this is a live service titles, and these games are always a long-term bet as much as they are a day one experience.
何ぼーっとしてんだよ。
What I can tell you is the foundation is strong enough that I think Origin deserves your attention. If you're gonna play one new anime RPG this year, this is the conversation you need to be in. Alright, that's gonna do it for me today. If this helped you figure out whether Seven Deadly Sins Origin is worth jumping into, I genuinely appreciate a like on this video. It helps me more than you know. And if you're new here, welcome in. This channel is built around honest game reviews. No sponsors, no hype, just for the sake of hype. Just real coverage games that is worth talking about. Subscribe if you want more, because I love when YouTube just pays me for talking. And hey, if you want to hang out and watch me play some of these games live on Twitch, link is in the description. Until next time, stay safe, stay smart, and stay alpha.